Let's do this. Hello, and welcome to Exec On AI, the podcast for exec by exec working on AI. Today we're receiving Philip Edwards, the vice president.
Vice President of Business Development for SAN Technologies.
Thank you so much for helping me.
You're very welcome.
Welcome to this podcast.
Thank you for having me.
So a little bit of context. We've met actually discussing what is AI, what is not AI. And we thought, while we're here, because he doesn't live here, he lives in Boston. We met in Seattle. We're recording this podcast from Seattle.
Yes.
And he just took 30 minutes of his time out of this weekend. So thank you so much for doing this. And the idea is to go a little bit deeper with you guys. So welcome. Maybe before we start, can you give us a little bit of context around who are you, what do you do, and what's your experience with AI?
Absolutely. So again, I'm Philip Edwards with SAN Technologies, and I'm the Vice President of Business Development for artificial intelligence, machine learning, and digital twin initiatives worldwide. So our company is founded and headquartered on the continent of Africa in Mauritius and Nairobi. But I am leading the charge here in the United States for business development. So some of the work I do is here in the US, but some of it's also back on the continent of Africa, as well as throughout Europe and Asia.
So we're talking about more than 100 employees?
Yes.
For my understanding, okay.
Yes.
In terms of revenue, maybe just to give an idea.
Growing exponentially. So SAN Technologies is a new company, but we have the McKinseys and Accentures of the world squarely in our sight, and we're running them down very quickly.
That's really cool. So I think to start this podcast, the best introduction is maybe defining together what is AI. Is it only machine learning? Is it just a buzzword? What is really AI?
So while I personally do not believe we currently have anything that is true artificial intelligence, we have what is best described as the application of the discoveries made by machine learning towards solving a problem. And that's what we call artificial intelligence. There will be artificial intelligence soon. Some might argue that it already exists, but what most people interact with on a day-to-day basis and call AI, in my opinion, is just the application of the outcome of machine learning algorithms. And
so what we're saying is today we're basically taking an input, taking an algorithm, having a result. This is what we call AI. In the future, you see something different. What will be this AI?
So that's where I start to have a little bit of a quandary with AI, because I think we had discussed earlier that I believe that I am an advocate for human existence in an increasingly algorithmic world. And I think that there's a very important role for humans to play in the application of machine learning and artificial intelligence. When we just turn it over to algorithms, I think you start to lose, obviously, a lot of the humanity, but also the goal of what you're trying to solve can really start to take a hard turn if you don't keep it in check with human intent, emotions, ethics, and objectives, right? You can't just turn it all over to machine learning and artificial intelligence.
So that's really interesting. And I think this is why I wanted you in this podcast, because ethic impact, it's core to this conversation. Can you explain what you mean by an algorithmic world?
Sure.
It's increasingly.
So, day to day, and I find myself guilty of this, ChatGPT, Claude, all of these things are fantastic tools, highly useful. But there is a lazy approach to using them. And then there is an enlightened approach to using them. And I think that just simply going in and saying, write me an email to do this, to say that, is a bit of a cop-out. But when you iterate and iterate and iterate, even 4 to 5 times, and get more and more specific and say, here's some detail around my relationship with this person or this client. Here's what I'm really trying to express. Those are ways to use these algorithms in a productive and humanitarian way, rather than just waiting for the output, right? We see it now with some of the latest releases with Apple's iOS. It's just proposing responses to texts for you. There's no humanity there, right? it'll work. But when I say that I am a proponent of the human relevancy in this algorithmic world, that's precisely what I mean on that front. But when you start to look at deeper use cases of artificial intelligence and machine learning, putting your business and your goals in the hands of an algorithm and blindly listening to the outcome without doing the iteration that I had mentioned, I think it can and will lead to some unintended results.
Yeah. But before we deep dive more into the lazy part, which I think worth discussing in detail, so you are an advocate of that, of humanity, of connection. Why is it important, according to you, that there's still a human touch?
Yeah, so a lot of the work I do at Sand Technologies, we are an impact-driven organization. We're not out just looking for any and all AI and machine learning projects. A lot of the work we do, we've completely revolutionized, with the help of the government, the healthcare system in the country of Rwanda. It's stunning to see what we've done. From the ground up, we have remote health outposts that are functioning off of solar power, connected through Starlink, with drone delivery for medications and critical infant food supplies. So the government in Kigali in Rwanda can sit there we call it the blue room, in one room, and literally see a dashboard that is pretty remarkably accurate to the pulse of the entire country's health. And when you look at it, say, this is what we're trying to do, you can have an outcome like that. But if you were to just come in and say, well, let's digitize all of the existing health files and hey, give me what you think is wrong, you might not have as elegant as an outcome as if you really come into it with the intent of saying, we care about maternal health.
Yeah.
We want mothers and children to have increased likelihood of survival through birth, but also through their entire life. And you can engineer the entire system that way with the help of machine learning, right? And the machine learning is doing everything from optimizing flight paths for the drone delivery to remote monitoring of temperature sensors in vaccine storage freezers, right? So we went in with a very specific intent, and I think that humanity is exactly what I'm talking about.
So the reason that I'm asking is because if something is working, then why bothering? If you just use AI as it is, and it gives you actually an input from what you're asking, why bothering? And I love your answer about you have to be intentional about what you're doing, and not just letting the machine decide for you because you're the expert. And so I have a really strong example on that. Actually, I was just asking AI to optimize my blog post, and it just gave me something that didn't match what I wanted. And so when I changed the prompt by telling them my intent with this post, it changed completely the answer it gave me. And
absolutely.
So the intent is really key on what we're doing.
Intent and background, all of that matters. And that's the human relevance that I'm talking about.
So when you're launching an AI project, the first thing you would do is, what's your intent, or what's the process that you're following?
Yeah, so I think that's a big difference for me and a lot of the other folks on the Sand Technologies team, is we really come in with a truly collaborative and immersive discovery process.
Yeah.
We don't come in and say, here's the solution to a problem that we think you have. We want to learn the past, present, and future of where you're at, and understand where you're trying to be, to come together to have a solution, whether it's digital twins for your water supply, or electrical grids, or healthcare, or biosecurity.
And how do you do that? How do you collaborate?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, a big part of that is the trust. Having the client trust you enough to really open up about what's not working or what they're trying to achieve.
Yeah.
And that trust leads to a dialogue where you can really dig deep and start to uncover what their pains are, what their desires are.
Yeah.
And if you come in with just a blanket solution and say, we've got this algorithm that does this thing and you should use it, you could be missing a lot of opportunity to help save lives, keep people happy and comfortable, or solve really important challenges.
So you're making the expert at the center of the conversation, letting them lead the conversation around what they need.
Absolutely.
And do they have enough knowledge? Because it's also about innovation. So my question, I guess, is how do you innovate versus make sure that it's still ethical and, you know, that we're still in control of the data that we're using and this kind of stuff? How do you balance?
Honestly, I think it all, again, comes back to the human focus, the human relevance. Because when you keep your interests at the core of a solution, that's your waypoint that you can always look back to that and see how far away you've wandered from that goal or how close you've gotten to that goal. And that's your beacon, so to speak, is what your original intent is and making sure that you're sticking to it. Because AI will iterate on its own, right? AI, but these algorithms will start to tell you what you think you should be doing or what could be best. And while a lot of times it's remarkably accurate, there are a lot of times where it's, to put a percentage on it, if it's even 5% off, over time that 5% turns into a very big delta.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We've been talking with another person at that time about specifically, this is where the learning is happening and this is where the innovation is happening, is when you have answers that you don't expect, because this is where you can see new correlation, new connection, new possibilities. So how is these false answers helping your business or helping your project?
Well, it's always good to have input, right? But at the end of the day, I think you need to execute scrutiny on that data to see, again, how accurate is that towards what your goal is? How relevant is it? And if it's an outcome that you weren't expecting, you can continue to go down that road and discover more, and it's fantastic. But it could be a false flag and send you off into a direction you really don't need to go down. So I think just blindly listening to these things without keeping your intent specific. And I think we need to give machine learning algorithms guideposts and
Like
guardrails.
what would be a guidepost? Would it be like rules to follow, or how do you see
Well,
that?
you want to give it, just like a child, you want to give it enough freedom to grow and discover things on its own. But at the same time, you're constantly nudging in either way to say, this is where we're going, not that way.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right. So, and I think that's important. And I think that's why it's critical for us to stay involved rather than just,
So I like to be really pragmatical on this podcast. Can you give us an example of one project that you've launched last year, for example, from collaboration with the team to actually going with an intent into a project, maybe building your own team, your own tools, maybe finding it in the market? One example of an AI project.
Yeah, sure. So I'm working right now with a wonderful US company that is looking for new locations and building cell phone towers on the continent of Africa. So already existing in Rwanda, but they're looking to roll out new markets. I can't tell you which countries they are right now because that's private. But, using some of these algorithms that contain extraordinarily deep levels of data from not just cell phone tower propagation signals, but GIS data to talk about what is it, rock, is it sand, is it water where you're going to run cables or build a tower, socioeconomic data to help see where the customers are going to be. We've been able to build some extremely powerful digital twin models of these future state networks to help them decide where not only is it best for them from a business viability standpoint, but also how is it going to serve the most people for the least amount of money for those local governments.
So I feel the interesting part here for Exec that want to launch an AI project with impact is how did it all started? Because now you're going to new countries, but how did you start this project? What was the trigger? How did you go about it without all the details?
Yeah, I mean, so this particular project, I started a conversation with the United States Embassy in Rwanda to find out what companies were doing business with Rwanda and were interested in working in that country, and was introduced to some really interesting projects and some really interesting teams, and it grew from there.
So there's a business need, then there's teams, then there's conversation.
Yes.
And then how do you decide if you're building your own tools, if you're going with something that's already in the market? What's the process?
That's when we start to get a little bit above my pay grade as a sales guy, so to speak. But we have an absolutely astonishing team of data scientists and leaders in this particular case in the telecommunications world. That, you know, there's so many existing tools out there, but there's also so many tools that we do and can build on our own to help create an amalgam of these existing platforms to put out the best solution for the client.
Yeah, makes sense. I know that one thing you're talking about in your website and that really catch up my eyes was identifying what are the path to innovation and to impact. So you're inviting people to do that. Is there like a recipe to understand where are the opportunities for businesses? Or
I think that the real recipe for these businesses is curiosity. I don't think there's a linear process that anybody can specifically follow, but I think if you're looking at your business or the grand challenges of your country or organization, they all have a future state that they really want to get to. What is that 10-year plan?
Okay.
And there's no better time to start working on that than now. And, you know, that curiosity to speak with an expert, like a lot of the folks on my team, we can really start to make inroads into those grand challenges today. And that grand challenge that you think is going to be your 10-year state could be in 3 years. And we could be working on things that you can't even imagine after that and solving challenges that you didn't even know were possible.
So basically what we're saying is if we want to have an impact, let's take the challenges that we have. And even though we're thinking really long-term, talk to people that might help us make it happen now.
Yeah, it's not embarrassing, right? Open up, have these discussions.
Yeah.
We love to have them. We love to have these thought studies and uncover new possibilities. Even things that we don't even think can be done can be done.
That's great.
And all you need to do is dig in and find the right process and the right solution to get to that goal.
Yeah. So people in America can definitely reach out to you. What would be the advice to other people? Like what would be a good person to talk to?
It depends. I think find somebody who has specific experience in the area that you're looking for. Again, I do a lot of work in telecommunications, oil and gas, water, smart cities, biosecurity, things like that. But even outside of that, supply chain and logistics, there's just so many different things. And there's always somebody that has experience in that, and you should seek them out and find them. But we fortunately have a very deep bench full of folks like that and can help.
So network is key. I just want to come back to the lazy part we were talking about in the beginning of the podcast. So I love your approach about saying if we're giving the power to AI, then we're becoming lazy. Can you explain a little bit more?
I think it's pretty simple, honestly. I think you just need to keep your humanity in the process. Stay involved. Don't just turn it over to Amazon said you should buy this. Well, maybe, but are there other things you should buy, or do you really need that thing? Like that's just a silly, simple level of it. But or the you know, the iPhone example of just responding to a text with a canned message. There's no, you're not in that. And I think that scales to business and governmental levels of thought leadership to where you need to stay involved in your solution. Otherwise, that lack of humanity can propagate throughout the entire system and you might not be solving the problems that you thought you solved. I think staying involved, staying purposeful, and yeah, I think it's critical.
I think it's a really important thing to be aware of, that when you're following what technology is suggesting you to do, you're also giving away your power. You're like following kind of, and so losing maybe your intent or what you're trying to be. So just be aware of that. That doesn't mean that cut yourself from technology and live in a forest, but it's also being aware that
it's understanding that these technologies are a tool.
Yeah.
They aren't the solution. The solution is your intent coupled with the tool to deliver the solution.
Oh, yeah.
They are not, it's not a blanket solution.
But it's true. When you look around you, you are suggested what to purchase. You are suggested when to eat. You're suggested how to drive. Everything is suggested. So yeah, it makes sense.
Yes.
I just want to finish maybe this episode with maybe a message you would like to deliver around algorithm, machine learning. What is AI? How can you really have an impact? I think what's really important today is to say, how do you think people can really benefit from this technology and not just be victim of it, kind of?
Yeah, I think I'm going to sound like a broken record here, but I think it's really just staying involved, staying alert to what, you know, what new technologies and solutions are there, but keeping your perspective on using those as a solution to your problem, not a crystal ball that will just tell you what you want to hear and what you need to do. You need to be steadfast and active in this process, and don't get lazy.
Love that. Love that. Anything exciting maybe for the future before we close that up?
So many things that I wish I could talk about, but you'll have to stay tuned. We're going to be at some amazing conferences this year.
Yeah.
We're going to have some amazing case studies coming out with a lot of the work that we're working on now that I can't talk about right now.
Not yet.
But
stay tuned,
keep an eye on Sand Technologies. Yeah, it's fun stuff coming. That
was Philip Edwards. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Well done.